Check, check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear us loud and clear? What's going on, Coach Paul?
I feel like I just rode on a plane with violent turbulence.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Coach?
Pretty wild day out there for sure. Pretty wild day out there. Let's get an audio check. Confirmation we're getting good. What's going on to every one of our viewers? Paul sounds good, but frozen. Let's see. We got the audio good.
Check,
Let's see. We'll just keep going through it.
check.
Audio good, but Coach Paul
Actually,
looks delayed.
audio, but Coach Paul looks way delayed. Yeah, I am way delayed. I'm going to restart.
Okay.
I'll be back.
Sounds good. See you then, Coach. We'll be here. All right. Welcome to At the Buzzer, our market recap. If this is your first time here, I'm Coach Jay. That is Coach Paul. He'll be back. But the goal of this segment is to review what happened in the markets for the day. We may talk about some markets that you have not traded before, but we believe our goal as traders is to identify opportunity, see how we could have taken advantage of those opportunities while managing our risk. We might also have Coach Robert joining us in a little bit. It is the last Thursday of the month, and he may be joining us, but coming in a little. But let us know how you did in the chat. Were you up on the day, down on the day, maybe stayed flat? Were you surprised by anything today? Extreme volatility in a tight range is what we had today. For me, I took a loss today. Personal daily loss limit day for me. Was pretty locked into what the markets were doing. Was looking for this short right here in the Nasdaq. Was about 3 minutes too early on this breakdown below 21,700. I just realized I'm not showing my Nasdaq chart, but I'll show that now. Looking for this breakdown here, was just a little bit early, got stopped out before the market eventually went in my favor. But hey, that's trading. It happens. But let us know how you did in the chat, and we will get into it. If this is our first time meeting, I'm Coach Jay. Been a Topstep performance coach since June of 2023. Been trading for the past 13 years in the futures markets for the past 6. Coach Paul will be back to do his intro. But let's get into this market. We know we have earnings coming out as well. We have Apple, Visa, and Intel. So I'm going to switch back over to our trading view charts real quick so we can go over those earnings. Intel, we got numbers out. And earnings per share, Intel, 13 cents, estimate 12 cents. Beat on revenues, 14.26 billion, estimate was 13.81 billion. Their data center revenues are higher than expected. Operating margin 9.6%, estimate was 4.12%. All right. So Intel doing okay. Intel, probably one of the forgotten tech companies that are out there right now. Seeing some positive reaction, but that's really not the one we're looking for. As far as banking goes, we have Visa. Visa revenues at 9.5 billion, estimate was 9.34. Earnings per share estimates came in at 4.7. Let's pull up a Visa chart here. Earnings per share came in at $2.75. Estimate was $2.66. Let's pull up a Visa chart really quick. That's not the right one. That's the Visa. That's not it either. Come on, Visa. Where are you? There we go. Little positive reaction in Visa here as well. Looks like they beat on earnings. Adjusted net income, 5.5 billion. Estimate was 5.29 billion. So it looks like they beat on a lot of their expectations. Again, for all of these companies, the reason we're taking a look at them is because some of these companies are major components in the equity markets that we trade. And as these companies move, the equity markets will move as well. But we also know that there's some other things that can move equity markets, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Apple numbers have not come out yet. I'm sure while we're going over the charts, we will see the reaction to the Apple print, because that's really the big one that everyone's been waiting for. And I just saw somebody say it in the chat. Those 28% APRs, it's doing Visa pretty good right now. But outside of that, let's go back over to the bottom of the hour. 10 minutes to Apple, right? Yeah, right. So we'll switch back over to TradingView when we get Apple numbers out. If you see it in the chat before we get it, just let me know and I'll pop back over there. But let's take a look at what we had on the calendar for today. We know we have jobless claims. It's Thursday. Uh, we heard Chairman Powell talk about the labor market improving, getting a little stronger. We have jobless claims out at 207,000. Forecast was 225,000. Um, as far as scheduled numbers, we had a pending home sales number come in on a big miss, negative 5.5%. Forecast was 0%. It's almost like that crude number where there is a big miss there. But again, the biggest news, and this is going to be the cycle. Coach Paul and I have talked about this, but the biggest news is going to be the unplanned news for the foreseeable future, right? We know we brought in a new administration in the United States, and our president, when he speaks, the comments that he makes moves markets, whether that be to the upside or the downside. It's going to cause volatility. We saw that into the close with the comments on tariffs in Canada and Mexico, 25% tariffs because of fentanyl, which is interesting. And we got another comment here after the close. China's going to end up paying a tariff as well. We're in the process of doing a China tariff. Those are going to be the biggest market movers. Again, we'll continue to talk about it. Manage your risk. We can't be afraid to trade. We saw Bobby on Topstep TV during Power Hour. We got some volatility. He had a plan for how you trade that volatility, right? You don't want to just be shooting in the dark. But negative news, the market's dropped. He found a spot to get in that was allowing him to limit his risk. That's the most important. Limit your risk. But you can just jump onto a trend like that, right? He did it there. Again, Bobby is a pretty good trader. I've worked with him one on one, and I've seen what his trading style is like. That scalping style, and that's kind of going to fit this market that we have currently. And we got a guest in the green room, so I'm going to bring him in here in a second. But if you don't have a plan, right? If you don't have a plan for trading that, it's okay. I would prefer if you didn't have a plan for you to just stay out of it and let the markets settle, right? Let the markets do what they're going to do. It's okay if you see other people jumping in and making money on it. Just because somebody else is doing something doesn't mean I have to, unless I want to study it and try to figure it out. But just throwing on a position, definitely not at that time, not what you want to do. But let me bring our guest in here. Give me 1 second. And I'll get you up on the screen. I think you can hear him in the background, and you should be able to see him now. What's going on, Coach Robert? They should be able to hear you now. I had you muted, but go right ahead.
All right. Hello, hello, hello.
Awesome. Yep, we got him here now. Thank you for joining us, Coach Robert. Coach Paul should be back in a second as well. But it's Thursday, last Thursday of January. We know we had Coach Robert on a couple of times this month, and thanks again for joining, Coach. I do want to talk to you a little bit about your momentum strategy when things get crazy like that. Right after we get a tweet or a comment from the president, how your strategy goes through it. But let's go through and I'm going to get this DLL message because I hit my personal DLL today. But let's go through the markets first, and then we'll get into the equities. So to the downside today, we had live cattle down 1.66%, soybean meal down 1.68%, and natural gas down 3.31% for our biggest percentage mover to the downside. To the upside, we had micro Ethereum futures up 3.36%, silver up 3.97%. That's the second day in a row silver's up there. And platinum, 4.99% for our biggest percentage mover to the upside. To talk about our big four, we have gold up 2.01%, making a new all-time high today. Shout out to our gold traders. Crude oil crude oil up 0.7%. We saw a pretty crazy pop in crude off of the president's comments as well. The NASDAQ up 0.5% and the S&Ps up 0.45% to round out our big four. I have a NASDAQ chart up here, but let's, Coach Robert, tell our viewers, they all know who you are, but tell us why you're here, introduce yourself, and we'll get right into the markets.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just here saying hello again, and I appreciate you having me on the At the Buzzer. Look forward to seeing Coach Paul back again as well. Man, these teams really shaping up. We have the one, just say hello and talk about the VIP stuff for a little bit. I could take the entire time. Coach Vince and Coach Dakota, the final draw tomorrow. And that's going to be fun. 9:30 for Coach Vince for the VIP draft and 10:30 for Coach Dakota. And yeah, really looking forward to it. We'll get everything set up and everybody get their emails out on Friday, most likely end of day. And then we're good to go. We'll get all the accounts set up and ready to go. But here we are. I had to come in here and pump it. There's the team right there, the Technical Titans.
Technical
Titans.
Good stuff, man. So, have you started working with your team already, Coach Robert? I know you got a lot of plans for them. Have you started working with them already, or how's it been going?
Did to a point. Just kind of an introduction thing. I already written up a document of how to do things, and I'm just going to share what I do, how I do it, and then some are going to adapt it and adopt it, and then adopt it, then adapt it, and some just going to be like, this isn't working, and we're just going to go through what works for everybody, because we know everybody's trader. Every trader is different. So we didn't go through the whole thing. We actually have our first full-on introductory meeting tomorrow night. I figured that was the fairest thing to do. You know why? I mean, I was the first team name, just happened to be on the list that way. Monday morning, I don't think it would have been fair to train and talk with an entire group all week long when the last team isn't even picked till Friday afternoon, Friday after
Makes
10:30.
Sense.
So
Leveling the
I just told
playing
them, I say,
field.
hey, we can answer a couple of questions and stuff, but after that, I'm like, we're not going to go through the whole deal, and we'll save that. Just wouldn't have been fair to everybody else.
Awesome, good stuff. We got Coach Paul back. Coach Paul, how we doing over there?
I'm back.
He's back.
Back
and better than ever.
Kind of short wired like the equities today.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So let's get into that. Actually, we had a couple of trades that had the potential. I had a losing trade today in the Nasdaq. We talked about that a little bit, but let's start with last night's open. I'm going to pull up your moving averages there, Coach. Oh wow, look at that. What's that white line there? Off of this crazy reaction from the president, we test into that 200 moving average and bounce off of it. But let's take a look at last night's open the same way we normally do. I'm going to attach a VWAP to that, and that will be for the full session. And I do want to talk about that house account trade that we did put on. Was a pretty good one and had the potential for higher, but when comments come out, you can't control it. So last night we had a decent move in the markets. Wasn't the most convincing, urgency trade that we've seen. Kind of a slow drift up and a little bit of range here. The markets, I feel, equity markets are trying to decide what to do with this gap down that we had to start the week. Going into the last day of the week, we'll see what happens there. But it feels like the markets are trying to figure out, hey, do we close this, or was this sell-off real, and do we continue back to the downside? We know we had Jim Dalton on today. He said it feels like the adults are not in the room, which I think is a hilarious comment. Because if they're not in the room, who's controlling these markets? But it feels like that, and we're not getting direction, right? It's almost like we're trading against each other, waiting for the next big move in the markets. So decent move overnight. Very range-bound markets that we have here.
Violently range-bound, I might add.
Violently range-bound. Here's the New York session open. Here, Coach Robert, I don't know if you want to share charts, but if you want to share them in video, I'll cue them up. But here's the New York session open. The trade I was looking for was a rejection up at these 750s. So we had the price leave the range to the downside. Volume didn't go, and then we had price leave the range to the upside, get pretty extended away from this VWAP, and it didn't go with it either. And on this rejection at 750, which is I'll call it a minor psychological level, right? Because it's a whole number. On that rejection at 750, I'm looking to go short. Where I got short was right under 700. In hindsight, I preempted this short. Turned out to be a loser. Was the right idea, but just got in a little bit early. But that was exactly it. Looks like we might have just got Apple earnings as well. So let me switch over real quick. We'll go to Apple earnings, and we'll get right back into these charts. Let's see what we got here. All right, Apple up a couple bucks after this. Let's see if we got the numbers out. Earnings per share, $2.40. Estimate was $2.35. Looks like they just beat on revenue estimates. 124.3 billion. Estimate was 124.18 billion. Apple moved up, Apple moved down. We still waiting on a couple of numbers there, and of course the conference call forward guidance is going to be what's most important. What do they see coming up in their future? Any headwinds or anything like that for the company, or are they in a great spot to continue growing? I personally love Apple as a company, but there's a bunch of questions about are they continuing to innovate? How do you guys feel about Apple, Coach Robert? How do you feel? And then I'll throw it to Coach Paul. How do you feel about Apple as a company?
Well, there's a personal side. I'm an Android user myself. This is a little more open source, a little more technical. We kind of probably guessed that. I mean, it's a company that they're, what can you say? They've been around for decades, totally visionary, set the stage for a lot of products and just keeping things going. Just, there's a different way of doing companies though. And this is, I'm going to talk this one thing about maybe 15 years ago. And I used to own an IT company, like a outsourced small business thing. And we were talking one time and said, about how the company can be better. And they said, we had a comparison. We had Google and Apple. He said, they're just totally different companies, right? Top of the world, they were the two top ones at the time. And it was interesting to say, let's compare what they want and what they do and what they provide. So we looked at what the employees for Apple were saying, the employees for Google were saying. And Google was, come and go as you please, have free lunch on us. They do want you to work a lot of hours like they all do, but it was just kind of more open and free flowing. And hey, if you want to go there, who goes down to the slides to go from floor 4 to floor 2 and stuff like that. And people loved it. And then you talk to the Apple and they said, if you're 1 minute late coming back from lunch, you're docked an hour. And it was just really, really crazy. And if you didn't do 50 plus hours, it was really restrictive, but they're a huge company also. So you can't really knock either one because you're going to gravitate to what you gravitate. I said all that to say this. I'm an Android person, always been. I have a Google Pixel phone, but Apple's a company. Sure. I mean, you can't say anything bad about it. They're just the way that they operate. And then the same thing, if someone's on an iPhone, then they're like, oh, this is great. I can FaceTime, do all these other things. And they're like, I don't like the way that is because of, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, this company solid. I mean, if you bought stocks, what was the thing somebody said? Instead of buying, when the first iPhone came out, instead of buying the phone, you bought the stock, that amount of dollars in stock. Yeah. And then the next version, don't buy the phone, buy that amount of stock. It was something, I'm going to mess the numbers up. We can Google it. And it was something like it would cost you $18,500 that you would have spent on phones, but that stock would be something like 2.3 million today. It was insane if you did the math on it. I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Can't argue with the numbers.
So,
Speaking of numbers, we got a couple more numbers out here. Products revenue, 97.96 billion. Estimate was 98.02. iPhone revenues lower than estimates, 69.14 billion. Estimate was 71.04 billion. I know I haven't bought a new iPhone in a little while. I'm still rocking with the iPhone 13 mini, and I don't think I'm going to change that. I had a 11 Pro Max before that, and I was like, this is the biggest phone in the world. And I try to be on my phone less, so I went with the smallest phone they had, and then they stopped making it. So this one has a cracked back case, but I'm not changing it until it stops working. What else do we have here? Service revenue. And I think this is where a lot of people are kind of looking towards Apple, where they're moving away from products a little bit. We saw some of their product innovation, maybe not jumping off the shelves like they thought it was going to, but Apple kind of moving into the healthcare space and services. Service revenue, 26.34 billion. Estimates was 26.1 billion. Coach Paul, what are your opinions on Apple?
I have an iPhone, and like you, it's 4 years old.
Yep.
So, two things. I've had both. I'm not someone who's loyal to one brand.
Right.
I don't like watching videos on my phone.
Okay.
I'm from another era. Like I want some size. I'd rather, if I'm going to watch something, I'd rather have it on my big TV,
right.
Or a smart TV. So the functionalities that I could use either one. I am a big both companies, but Apple, how much do they still have the $1 trillion treasure in cash? What was the insane amount of cash that they have? It's a
Uh,
$1 trillion.
I was trying to see if it's listed here. I don't see it, but it's something crazy like that.
Okay, that part we talk about innovation. If they're just squirreling away cash, they're not innovating, and when I innovating, going to healthcare. I just think that you know
Healthcare,
over time.
banking, right? We've seen them come out with the Apple Card, where they're getting into credit as well. Trying to innovate, I guess, outside, because at the same time, how much can you really do with a phone, right? Until you start
Yeah.
implementing a phone into, you put a chip in someone's head and say, you know, if you want to ignore your text, blink twice. What else can you really do with a device? If somebody comes up with that idea, I want a little bit of credit. I want 5%, 0.5%.
And maybe they're in a secret lab developing this.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
you
But
talk about that. It's kind of funny. It's first of all, did you know that the iPad was before the iPhone? And there's a video on this of there's an
Really?
interview where they're on stage. It's actually Bill Gates and Steve Jobs sitting there, and they were talking about it and how Bill Gates said, "Hey, you have a really cool product here with the." It was when the iPad came out. He's like, you know what? The I'm sorry, the iPhone came out. He said the iPad was first because everybody it was still a text phones like the flip phones and the like the BlackBerry style type stuff. So they said we can do better, and Apple developed the iPad first. And they said,
Mm,
well, hold on a second. Phones are coming back around. Let's shelve that, use the same technology, shrink it, and put that on a phone. And so technically, the iPhone was after the iPad. Not my
oh,
words. So
wow.
you can look up the video. Yep, on stage, they just shelved it, left it there for 6 months until people got used to it because they had to change two things: people using a phone, and they had to change to a touch panel phone and then make it a big iPad where you can like stretch it and stuff. And neither
Right.
one of those were around at the time. So they said, we're going to shelve that and we're going to give them one thing first, the phone, and then we'll bring the iPad out. And everybody thought it was in that order, but Steve Jobs himself said that it's not.
iPad was
So,
first. Interesting.
and here's the technology thing that I'll share with you, and watch somebody else steal this. And if you do, I'm getting I'll even take 2%.
There we go.
It's for traders. Yeah, it's for traders. What and it's almost like, remember those the wristbands that you jog the heart rate. Remember those?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
The
can't remember
Nike,
what they're
I
called, but I
used
know
to
exactly
use
what
with
you're
the
one.
talking about.
Nike.
Yeah,
What were they?
They were like
I have.
it was like a step tracker almost.
Yeah. It
Was
was.
that the
I want
one
to say it was a
for the
Nike thing. So you
Sony
take one of the
Walkman where you put it on
A
your
Fitbit.
arm?
Fitbit.
Fitbit, Jay.
All
That's the
right.
one. The
Hold on.
Fitbit.
Before
There
you
you go.
continue, Robert, before you continue,
Yes.
I just have to give the chat credit because the chat knows everything. Lioness Rain
Yes.
knew exactly what you were talking about right away. Coach Hoop had it. Rich Layton, the Fitbit. Yes, go ahead. So a Fitbit for traders. What do you got?
Oh yeah, shout out to the chat. They saved my ass a bunch of times. I'm in the background on TV going like, damn it, they'll ask a question and like 17 people, and then I'll be like, it's a this.
Right.
So, oh yeah, so thank you very much. So Fitbit. So I'll make this short. So you know how the Fitbit, you can train it, right? You want to go, okay, I have to wear this thing for a week, 24 hours a day, train it so it knows your sleep patterns, because let's just be real. You have two people next to each other. They both have different resting heart rates, and they
Yep.
both have higher heart rates. So if I'm being active or somebody else is being active, maybe my heart rate's 120 when I'm walking and somebody else is 160 when they're walking, making the numbers up. Well, they can't say to that person of 160 that when they go to hit 130 that they're overexerting their heart, because that's not normal. So you have to train it first. So I want to make one of those that we have Bluetooth it in to your PC. You trade for a week and you have to check off every day if you won or lost, and it matches it. So now if you're going to place a trade and it detects all this movement, your brain waves and your sweat on your fingers, it doesn't work. You can't put the trade on because you're trading with emotion.
Interesting. Talk to the
Wouldn't that
people
be
at
cool?
Whoop. I don't know if you saw that Whoop device, but talk to them. That might be an additional product they can put out. There's a ton of traders out there, and if it's going to help manage our trades, then why not? I would buy one.
I think so. And I
I
think
would
we
buy
need
one.
every edge we can possibly get. But that was the
It-
idea, you know?
I like it. I like it, and it's different for every person, right? Let's get back into these markets. So we saw the kind of the chop today. Really nice trades in the house account this morning by Anne Marie and Jerome. Anne Marie with her gamma levels calling out a level at 21,750 in the Nasdaq. You can see where this high was, 21,748. So a really amazing call there. Paying attention to some of the options data that's out there. Really nice rejection. Don't think they took the short. But then some other gamma levels that they had down here. I think 21,440 was an area. The team got into a trade around 500s, 503. I know Anne-Marie got in 533. Jerome got in for a pretty quick trade, 50-point trade, and that was about it. House account green on the day. For anyone out there on the Twitterverse that's keeping track, the house account is green. But I do want to go over a trade that I had and then kind of the end of the day where we saw that volatility. We've been talking about this for a little while and framing out this high volume candle on the 3-minute chart on the NASDAQ here. I got on with Dolby around 2 p.m. Eastern time or 3 p.m. 2 p.m. Eastern, right, an hour before power hour, and we were talking about a potential long trade, right? Here was that long that we eventually took. I actually just realized that the candle that I framed out as the high volume was the wrong one. Unless did I do that on a 5-minute? Whatever I did, it worked. Okay, I think it was supposed to be this one, but I framed out the wrong one. Whatever it was around this general area. You guys get what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
highest volume of the day at this time on this 5-minute candle. And once we started, I'm gonna go back to a 3-minute chart because that's what I trade on. Once we started to accept back into this candle, I'm looking for the potential to trade to the other side of it, right? And that's why we got into this trade to the long side. I'll put this back where I had it. So why we got into this trade to the long side. The low of this candle was right around 592. And once you start to see price acceptance back in here, this is where we took the long. Now, if you rewatch that segment, we were getting in right in this kind of consolidation right here. And I told Dolby, hey, I think we can get into a long here because we've already had a candle that accepted back into this price. And that was this candle here that I'm looking at, which was at, what time is this? This is 12:36 Central Time. These 3-minute candles, this candle got us back into the range. We can see we're starting to hold this. So what I was thinking was let's get in somewhere long, right? We might not get a perfect price, but our risk is going to go below the low of that candle, right? So about 25 points. We can keep it pretty tight and conservative target 50% of this range, ultimate target the other side of that range, and then anything higher up above 700s. This was a great trade, right? House count took this trade. We were able to trade through it. You could have potential targets for higher. But why I really want to bring this up is because of the uncertainty that we saw with 27 minutes to go into the close. We don't know that the president is going to come out and say that, hey, 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. So if you're in a trade and you're looking for higher, right, it's a good idea to manage part of it. Now, you saw Dolby trail some of that trade. We were in 2 contracts. We took one off at 50% here. Then he trailed the other one up as we got some profits. If that didn't happen, that trade turned into a loser before we could even figure out what the hell happened. So in these market conditions that we have right now, where there is uncertainty, do I want to try to hold on to trades for a long time? If they're going to work, 100%, right? I told you guys, like, I like holding on to trades that are going in my favor. And this was one where I was like, Dolby, just keep trolling, just keep trailing it, right? We had a 30-minute trade that was pretty much all favorable price action once we got above our entry. Why do I want to get out? I want the market to give me as many points as it's going to give me. In that same sense, if I'm deciding to manage my trades that way, I have to secure some profits along the way because of this, right? I don't know that this is going to happen. And I would hate for that trade to turn into a loser after being almost a 100-point winner. So that's the only trade I wanted to go over there. And I want to, throw it to you guys. Coach Paul, what were you seeing in the markets? And then Coach Robert, I don't know if you want to bring up charts or if you want to just kind of talk through what we have here as well.
I'll just talk after Paul.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Go ahead, Coach Paul.
We talked earlier, beginning of the year, to prepare for sudden movements. Just to review that, in this kind of environment, you can either you have one choice is to pare down size. If you're going to keep the same stops, you have to change the size of your risk. How many different moves do we have today of 100 or more?
More than you can count.
So you're trading minis, and this is a 3-minute chart.
Yep.
So, I mean, size down. In turbulence like this, if you don't size down, you're what's that video we had yesterday?
Oh yeah, it's the Tyson punch.
The
I deleted it out of
roundhouse,
my. Yeah, you're gonna get knocked out.
you're gonna get knocked out. It, any little like that, right? Look at what happened in that 3-minute chart. Was a 100-point move?
So from here, that first 3 minutes, we had about 85 points, and then the continuation, 150 points in about 4 minutes, we'll call it. Shout out to Bobby, who was on TopstepTV, that said, hey, you know what? This is a wave. I'm a scalper. The markets are moving down. I'm going to take my couple of points out of there. But yeah, 150 points in 4 minutes, where the entire range for the day was 300. So half of the day's range in 4 minutes.
And even the ones the breaks are. So all I was going to say is, in volatile markets, that's what professional money managers do. They size down. The market makers are going to do the same thing. They're going to adjust. They're not there to take infinite risk. So I think today was an example of it.
Yep.
I know I'm 1/3 of what I was, and my losses were bigger than I expected.
And you're
So
1/3 of the size that you're trading.
I'm 1/3 of the size. So it's not knocking me out, but I'm taking in the equities, I'm taking more hits than I want. So I have to get more defensive. So I'm going to size down again.
There we go.
And if that isn't going to work, there's other markets.
I mean, platinum moved 5% to the upside today. I'm sure if I looked at that chart, there was an opportunity somewhere there, right, where I don't have to trade the insane equities that are going to have that volatility. Anything else on the equities, Coach? And I'm going to jump over to Coach Robert's chart that he's sharing here.
I'm good.
Sounds good. Coach
That's
Robert,
great.
you are up here now.
Yep. So that's the first one we did today. I just want with the group I'm in, that I have this little process I follow. Gave them the document. We don't have all the tools yet because we didn't have that first meeting. Coach Paul was here to hear that. We're going to do that Friday. But I said, here's an example. This was during the day, so I was super busy on production today. We had a lot going on. You know, Jim Dalton coming in, and then Trump tweeting stuff out or talking. It was really, really busy in the back. So I didn't do a lot. So I said, hey, here's what we can do. And basically, you're just looking at a couple of pivot breaks, and I have the target areas calculated out, and I just dropped those in and said, hey, if you guys want these, this is what I'm seeing. And these were all put in ahead of time, meaning after I have a couple of pivots up and down, I said, all right, well, hey, if we come back and we break this, I think this is what we may be seeing. There's 5 trades on there. One was a loser. I marked it off as a loser. Half the losers too. And then, yeah, some of them took the trades, especially the one on the right, the very top one. They're like, what the heck? That market is not going. It dropped down. And that top right one, right? See that zone up there. And ways to played is if it's above the market, you're going to go through it. So you enter the bottom, makes the top. And if it's below the market, it's a short. You go short the top and cover at the bottom. You see the one on the top right, it's bigger. Yeah, you see it?
I'm going to try something real quick here just so we can use your cursor. So you're looking at this one as the first one, right?
Yes, that's the first one. So how that's calculated, if you go to the top left, and I'll make this real simple. We want to talk through the whole thing. There's one pivot. See, it started down, went up, and then turned down, right? So that's a pivot on the top, and then it followed it down until it goes back. There's your pivot. So I calculate from the top pivot to the bottom pivot, and then they say, great, if it breaks below that, where's the potential target area? And you trade through that. And then it goes up again, and then down again. And that's a little short. Yeah, so it took all morning before it actually went through there. And then, we have the high and the low, and you can see the one that we lost. It says loser. The one under that, those two trades were put on almost back to back from each other. Okay. But they were plotted at the top one. That's a loser. You can see the high and the low go with the left for a little bit.
This high
left
here.
A little more. Nope. Left a little more. more, the next pivot to the left, that one. So that's your high pivot and then low pivot.
Got you.
Yep,
Okay.
that calculates the one that's the loser. Now go to the high pivot far left. And now to the low pivot you were just on. He gets further, so the next zone is below the loser one,
Okay.
and that would happen to be a winner. So we had a better movement, more volatility, and the surprise one was the one on the top right, because we had a pivot on the bottom, pivot on the top, and then that zone starts plotting. Yep, and then as the market went down, that made the pivot. So we knew we have it on the bottom. It goes to the top, comes down. That just basically you have to wait for the two pivots. And then I use the calculations and I say, well, if we end up going above that pivot again, that high, we should be, in my opinion, targeting this area. So you would long at the bottom of that zone, that yellow zone, and you would close your position at the top of that zone.
Okay.
And there was no way this was going to happen. Like, what the heck? You know, Coach Rob, you're nuts. I'm like, it may not happen, but if it doesn't happen, we're not going to take the trade. But the point is it looks like 11 a.m. if I can see the clock right, the time right at the bottom. 11 a.m. that zone was actually wasn't plotted. It was plotted around 11:30 because the pivot goes up, goes down. Right, that makes the high pivot, right? So at around 11:30, that's how we knew the top pivot was there, not 11. But since we know that's pivot, right? So we plot the zone above the pivot just to identify which one we're looking at. So at 11:30, we drew that box on the top, that zone at the top, and we were just like, "This is nuts. The market's not doing any of this stuff." What happened?
Okay.
Right up to it, right into it, right through it, and everybody walked away. That's like a 24-point target or something like that. So it was really good, you know. Hey, does it look? We don't have, no, but this is the process, and this is what I do, and this is why I always say this is why we're the technical titans, is because there was no thought into these. We have a pivot top and a pivot bottom. We're going to plot those. We're going to calculate out what our potential zone is going to be. You put the trade on, and it works or it doesn't. There's one little thing. If it starts hovering towards the target and you're into 15 points already, just close the damn trade, take your money. No reason to lose 15 and then lose another 15 for a stop. No reason to do that. If it enters and immediately goes the other direction, just close it. We don't have to waste that entire amount. So that's really the only like discretion that we would have. Other than that, we're not doing like, hey, what's volume doing? Where's VWAP on this? I have no idea. You know, it's really just a very technical way of doing things. It takes emotion out, right? We always know that one of the largest impacts and that affects traders and maybe doing something that's not quite right or struggling are the emotional aspects. So if we can remove that, I think it gives us a nice edge, a nice advantage. And that's all we're doing. That's why we're the technical titans, showing a couple of things to the traders, and they're liking it so far.
Nice stuff. Good stuff here. Good stuff, Coach Robert.
And then if you take that chart, I don't know if you clicked on the second one, but that exact chart, if you click on the other link in there, Jay, and pull that one up, we don't have to talk through it, but all it is a 1,000 tick chart. Only reason I had a 5-minute up to show them because that's what the group was using. And then I said, great, I would be using a 1,000 tick chart and look at the peaks and the breaks that we can have. We'll be taking a couple of smaller trades, but each one of those higher and lower pivots, we can put little zones above those. They'll all be calculated out. All we have to do is win a few trades like that and close up for the day and walk away with our profits.
Nice. Good stuff, Coach Robert. So we've heard Coach Robert now talk about this strategy a couple of times here, right? Traders, if you may not have the zones getting plotted, but we have a general idea of what's happening here, right? We're looking at the tick charts. We're waiting for a high pivot, low pivot, and then what Coach Robert is doing with his process is plotting a zone that says, hey, you know what, I'm looking at a trade potentially here. But Coach Robert, the last time you were on.
Throw the 5-minute back on because it makes more sense for those zones, Jay, please. There you go. That just makes more sense on the pivots. That's all. But go ahead, please.
We had some traders that hang out in the Coach J chat and Discord all the time. They said, hey, you know what? While I'm looking for some of the bigger trend moves for the day, I do like this Coach Robert style for catching a couple of scalps. And what I love about trading, traders are going to take this information, and if they find it useful, make it their own thing, right? There are traders who are taking the break of this pivot as their trade, right? Where they're going to find different information, right? They're going to find maybe that works, or they might find out, hey, why does Coach Robert put his zone all the way down here instead of taking the break, right? Now, they're going to find information, and it's important to make anything your own trades. But I really do, like this strategy. Very clearly defined entries and exits. And like you said, taking some emotion out of it. So good stuff here.
Exactly. Some use them as reversals.
Yep.
If you use those zones as reversals, you still only lost one trade, and it was the one that was up top because it just blew right through it. You would have entered the very high one with that big white candle in the center of the chart. That would have been your only losing trade because the rest of them entered the zone, you put your entries in and it goes the other way, and you would just take like about the size. If you have a 10-point zone, let it go to the what I would perceive as the low target. That's your entry, and then take your points the other direction. So you really only would have had one loss on that if you actually flip those the other direction. Now, it doesn't always work out like this. I just want to be clear. You know, it just
nothing
happened to be
does.
today. I'm like, hey, we're going to plot these out, throw them in the group ahead of time. This isn't post. This is, hey, we made 2 pips, and then some traders took them, and a couple of passed their own combines because the other ones aren't out yet. But we're not doing, they don't have all the details, but it's pretty close.
Good stuff. Good stuff, Coach Robert. Any questions on that, please put them in the chat. Let us know. We'll try to grab those and throw them over to Coach Robert. Going to go back over to the charts, and let's talk about a market that made a new all-time high today. Let's see if oh, hold on, let me try that one more time. Now you should hear air horn. Air horns for gold. Is
that an all-time high?
All-time highs in gold.
All-time high.
All-time highs in gold. The previous high was right around 28.52. And we made a new all-time high today. Today's high, 28.53.2. We talked a little bit about this rally. Again, I want to give a big shout out to Hoag, who we know talked about that, the delta information that he was seeing, right? Gold was under some very heavy selling pressure, very negative delta as price kept moving. We talk about short squeezes in that delta information, where if the entire market is short and the price starts going up, Coach, what happens? Coach Paul, what happens? Go ahead.
Bad sellers create great rallies.
Great rallies.
Losers move a market.
Yep.
And with that, what is in with that negative delta as the market's going up, it's like an entity was adding to a losing trade. And that's the kind of mindset that is. So when that valve is released, that buying pressure, it's going to be most likely the people who are selling it that are scrambling with urgency because they don't have time. They're
Right.
done. And wow, that still looks like a bullish chart.
Very bullish. When are we going to hit 3,000 in gold is my question now. We still got about 150 points to get there, but what's slowing this market down? Someone actually posted a headline and while you keep going over this chart, I'm going to see if I can find that, but
sure.
I don't focus too much on fundamentals, but there was a headline about the lack of supply of gold somewhere, which maybe, but
well,
anything else you're seeing here, Coach? I'm going to go down to a 30-minute chart.
Let's start with last night.
Wow.
Both went up, right? Gold went up and black gold went up today.
Yeah, it did.
Well, for a moment. Now, there was an urgency in there.
Nope.
But what time did that start taking off?
This is 12:30 a.m. Central Time.
This is almost like midnight.
Yep. Not sure if there was a comment or something out. There probably was, but that really was the start to this move.
Or a computer went, okay, you waited long enough. You got to get out, because that to me looks like liquidation or allocation. I don't know. We just talked about it. Who is under pressure when that happened? If we put that 200 bar moving average.
Here we go.
And then we go with the 20. That's urgency. There's many different technical ways to define this. But last night during Asia, what did we do? Nothing.
Nothing. Consolidation.
And when we'll talk about it again, if you don't have risk parameters, and if you're just saying, well, I'll get out when I lose 200, you don't put a stop in, or you have or for any reason you fall asleep, you wake up and you're done. So there you go. Staying. We talked about this yesterday on when we touched down the 200. It was like someone was waiting for that selling to buy it,
Yeah.
and we have not. And we've been on the run.
So
It's flow.
here's the headline. And shout out to Kagami, coach. You remember Kagami from joining all
Oh
of our
yes,
Discord classes. Gold stockpiling in New York leads to London shortage. What time did this
Hmm.
move start? Right before or right when our friends in London were waking up, getting to their platforms to trade. We see that volume
Sure.
coming in,
Yeah.
and just a really nice rally from there. London has all of the fun. I might move.
Well, they.
Coach Robert, you ever been to
Uh,
London?
Have I?
Yeah,
I have not been to London. No. Furthest I've been across the pond is Ireland.
gotcha. I think we might need to make it. Well, they're in the same time zone. We'll make a trip. They have all the trading fun.
Take a trip. Yeah, I can invite to
not a good.
France too from Jerome today.
There we go.
Well, it's not a good time for me. There was a shortage of Guinness, yeah, there's Gen
That's
Z
Irishman
is a
that we
big
finally caught up, and we finally caught up to the
yeah.
supply.
Gen Z, I guess, is big on Guinness.
Interesting.
So I have to delay my plans. But seriously, well, there used to be a thing called the London Gold Fix. I think it's still around. It's the center of gold trading in the world. This is interesting about who's getting squeezed. And then you can Google it, but the paper gold versus gold, cash gold. Gold dealers look down upon futures or anything that isn't cash because you have to make a delivery. They're used to making delivery. The leverage in futures, banks playing games, who knows if they're the ones that are doing this. But that's whoever it was relentless. That's a non-random movement. That's the
Yep.
one that if you are a position trader or if you're looking for extension, your type of, you have to find these versus and I'm not saying either one is wrong or right versus a small amount of time
Mm,
on it, like Robert's pit. But either way, you have to define yourself. If you don't, these kind of days either make you or break you. And when we look backwards to that, it's look at that. I just bought it here and sold it there.
right.
Until you got to trade it. My lesson, because I trade a lot of different markets, is I look for this, and I'm not trading gold.
Mm,
But these are the ones where you just let it go, or you can get you have non-random movement. I love those markets. I personally have to struggle in other ones to get this. So,
that makes sense.
uh,
Yeah, you're looking for the one that's going to present this. And coach, we hear you say you're a 10 lot trader. Oh, sorry, a 1 lot trader in 10 different markets. Because the one that does this and you're able to hold on to covers the small planned losses that you take in other places, and you don't know where this move is going to stop. Want to give a shout out to another Paul H. Hit the like. Love the name. Just a reminder for everyone in our audience to hit that like button. But caught this long trade in gold as well, from 2809 and held it to 2845. That's an amazing trade. And if you look at
oh,
why you
nice.
got in this trade with this test of VWAP, we talk about, getting in for a technical reason, getting out for a technical reason. We never got to close under VWAP, right? You could have literally held that trade all day. I see probably why you got out, because you have to trail, like we talked about in, that NASDAQ trade. You have to trail to some point. That's an amazing trade with almost no heat right now. You had to sit in it for 7 hours, but if I'm getting paid, this
That's a
way for
great
7
7
hours,
hours.
that's a great 7 hours of work. Great 7 hours of work. So really nice trade there, Paul.
Great job, Paul H. Go have a Guinness if you can find one. I believe you're in London.
Might be able to buy 2 with that.
Yeah. Well,
But
there's still Jameson. Don't forget about
if you,
Jameson.
yeah, or Tullamore Dew. I've actually become a fan of Tullamore Dew. All
All
right.
right. So
Mm.
what else do we have here? Oh, crude oil. Let's talk about
Oh,
crude for a little bit. Coach Robert, if you have
uh,
any other setups that are similar in any of these other markets and you want to send over a screenshot, let me know. I can pull those up. But Coach Paul, you were going to say something there.
um, everything got affected by that announcement.
That comment. Yeah. Yep.
But look where we're earlier in the day. We had that. You know what was very interesting is when we talk about London, we've been seeing where market rallies up and London sells. Market
y-
rallies up and London sells.
Yep.
Last night, London sold and the rally came in New York. A little change of pattern. So the low was made in London.
Yep.
We went up to the 200 today, where we collapsed back down to VWAP. And let's go blow that up a little more. Is once we approach, we touched the 200, and I did catch this short. We were talking about looking at the pattern. And where do I sell? So look how far away from VWAP when we hit that 200.
Yep. That was on a 30-minute chart. We were about 2.5 ATRs.
2.5 ATRs away from VWAP or the volume.
Yep.
And I'd love to compare this with Coach Roberts' swing chart. Or if there's what happened there, I'm like, okay, well, and I'm not good because we're away from volume. Is okay if I'm going to sell this, what is my risk?
Right.
You know, don't enter a trade unless you. We talk about the 7 principles from Mark Douglas's Trading in the Zone. Predefine your risk. Be
Yep.
prepared to take that, accept that risk, or don't take the trade. So I was a little nervous there because we had that change of pattern. But and I've seen this before with 2.5, and what for the candle people, the candle makers out there, what at the top, what is that little candle called? The doji?
Little doja right there. Yep.
All right. Against that 200. So that next half an hour, we're not seeing follow through buying at the 200. We're 2.5 ATRs away. Now, we talk about trying to get your trades on close to volume.
Yep.
Away from volume, you're away from that buying against the trend. So I waited till it broke the low of that doji because
Nice.
that's where the
Confirmation.
buying, that's the confirmation. And then 2 ATRs worth of risk or a close above the 200. No,
2 ATRs worth of risk on a 30-minute chart. Your stop was so far out of the way, it would have
yeah.
even survived the president's comments, which
So
you can't plan for. Most of my stops for where I set my stops, momentum-based stops, they're not surviving that at all, and I'm okay with that. But 2 ATRs, way out of the way.
I found it very interesting. We went right back to VWAP. That's it. That's the end of on a day. That's it. That's a great trade. That was like $850. But I found it very interesting. Is once it got back to VWAP, it never went back under, and then the announcement came,
Yep, right off
and
the
that
VWAP.
change of pattern. I wouldn't be so paranoid if everyone wasn't after me, but here, I that that was very suspicious. Great trade. Look how quick that came off. But going forward in a lesson, we talk about if you're going to look at volume, also understand how far away from volume. When we define the term volume as VWAP,
Yep.
if you're expecting this to keep going higher, you get some small risk there. But knowing that if you're long, okay, and you haven't gotten out yet, you have a lot of air. There's a lot of air
Right.
between the volume established and that point. So when we've been talking about the 2.5, how far away, how many ATRs you're away from volume, is
Trade
I'd
management
love to
decisions if you're still in it.
yeah, I'd love to overlay that with Coach Roberts'
Pivots.
pivot.
We can do that.
Uh,
We can do that. Maybe we
Yeah,
bring Coach
yeah,
Robert
yeah.
on
Just
for
the
another time, and we'll mark up some trades and see exactly what that looks like because there's definitely something there, for sure. I do want to answer a couple of questions that we had in the chat, and then we got about 5 minutes left. Even though we've been going over, but when conversation's good, you don't just cut it off. Contrarian Terra had a question. You mentioned in fast markets that gold closes at 12:30 p.m. and that is uh, Central Time. And is it 12:30 or is it 12:20? Either way. The reason I'm looking at that
12:30.
12:30, right? So the reason I'm looking at that is for this reason. Let me read the full question. I think you meant that was gold settlement time. Can you explain why
Yeah.
that time is important to gold traders? And that is correct. That is gold settlement time. The market still technically trades after it. But when we go to the charts tomorrow and we look for settlement price in gold, and the reason I said close instead of settlement, my bad, is that we can see most days that we get a volume spike around that time. Now, I was playing around with a trade idea around that because we have the volume. And if we can see, I was in a short initially. There was really no reason for me to take the short because the volume never left the range to the downside. But we can see that this area is giving us some opportunities and some potential volume when, some potential trade location when volume comes back into the market when we have some random headlines, right? Looking at this area. Now, if I look at this zone as we would any other zone, right? And I forget about the fact that, gold is closed. We can see that we talked about this yesterday, volume patterns, all of this volume underneath the volume moving average. What does price do? Consolidate in that range. VWAP is a flat line. Not too much to do here other than trade the extremes of this. You can scout this for a couple of points. But once that volume starts to come back in and we see the spike here, now this gives me an area to limit my risk. Here is that candle from the president's comments, and maybe we can now look at that and say that's the range we look at. What does volume do from that point? This is the same trade I took in the NASDAQ yesterday, right? Where we got back above 50% of this candle. VWAP is moving to the upside. Conservative target is going to be the high of this candle here. Same trade we took in the NASDAQ today. But looking at that time, 12:30 Central Time in gold, that's when the market settles. But sometimes we do get some trades after the fact in those markets.
Uh, I'd
Go ahead,
like to
Coach.
add one more thing on that. Um, the settlement and the close.
Mhm.
These are remnants of of the floor trading days. There was no aftermarket. There was a futures that cut off at a time. In
Okay.
this case, it's 12:30. What with electronic trading came on, they never changed the settlement time because the settlement is for the clearing firm. The clearing firm clears the trade. Exchange does not clear the trades. The clearing firm does, and they have to have a price to clear the trades for all the statements. Now, those
Right.
statements you don't get as a day trader, or because they're not as important. You will get them because you're not carrying any trades. They have to be margined. So the clearinghouse uses that settlement, but it keeps trading. So it can be confusing if the settlement doesn't matter to you, but it matters to position and hedgers. I mean, they have to have a common price that that marks to market every day. So that it might be a little confusing, but that's why the settlement and the close are often two different prices.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Coach. And the open in Comex open is at 7:20. That is correct. Correct. The open is at 7:20 Central Time. Who just called this out? Rich Layton. Great second day short in cattle today. I mean, yeah. We talk about all these markets. Look at this cattle trade, man. It's funny. I was actually looking at this morning. got distracted by the equities, of course. But damn it, why do I keep getting distracted? This is a nice trade.
Old habits die hard.
Yeah, 2% down in cattle. Man, what an amazing trade. Hopefully somebody in here caught that. I saw Coach Hoop mention in the chat that he was short cattle. So shout out to you, Coach Hoop, for catching that short. All right. Let's did we go over everything? I think we did. Rich, you caught it again. Nice trade. I mean, the metals, whatever's going on in the metals, they're having a moment again. We see platinum up 5%, silver 2 days in a row, about a 7% move in silver. You know, if you are having trouble trading the equities right now, where, you know, there might be some consolidation or a lot of overlap, a lot of, you know, headline risk and unplanned headline risk, metals are having a moment. They're trending. Not saying it's going to last forever, but get it while it's hot.
That platinum from last night's open was
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, what did silver do? We saw gold do that.
about the
We saw
same
platinum
thing.
do that. Did it do the
This
same?
is-
Yep,
this is a hit.
all the metals went up.
Same
It
thing.
was the
Look at
same
this.
buyer. My
Buying it
feeling is,
all.
yeah.
I mean, Valentine's Day is coming up. We got about 2 weeks.
Oh, there you go.
That's what's going on here. Cocoa prices going up, metals prices going up. Get them while you can. Or your
Get
gifts
your
are gonna come-
sweetheart a combine for Valentine's Day.
There we go.
Because gold and cocoa are too expensive.
Claude says, I've been talking about platinum for days. Claude, hopefully you've been trading platinum for days, because if you have been, you've been making money while the rest of us figure out what the hell is going on in the equities. There's money to be made in a bunch of different places. You do not have to be trading what everyone else is trading. My dog just came for a visit, so I think it's probably time to wrap it up soon. Coach Robert, any final words before we go here?
And before the dog barks, that's great. Mine's still sleeping over here. No, but just again, thanks for having on. I want to come on here and just do that, that shout out that we have for our technical titans. That's our logo. So we got it going on right there. So shout out to anybody else who's watching that. Thanks for having me on, Coach Paul, Coach Jay. I love it. Trump is back in office, and not as a political thing, but we know that administration moves the markets. Just manage your risk and just be careful trying to. Yeah, I mean, we're speculators anyway, because when he was in before, he was tweet out like China trade deal on, and market would go up or it would go down. China trade deal off, it went up and it went down. Right? Sometimes it moved. There's no, if it did, you couldn't bet on it. You'd be like, hey, China trade deal on again. It doesn't mean the market's going up or down. It was all over the place. So just be careful with that. Manage your risk. And we'll see everybody on the VIP. The last two for tomorrow. We started up next week. I'm Coach Jay. You did a wonderful job last time. I'm rooting for you again. As long as you come in second place, we're good. No.
All right, cut this guy's mic off. Get him out of here.
The gloves come off.
No, it's not a competition. Let's just be clear that it's not a competition between coaches, between traders. It's a competition between I as a trader and I as a trader 3 months from now. That's it. If you are a losing trader, losing $1,000, and you're a losing trader by losing $200 at the end, you are winning at that point. This is all we worry about. This is all we look for. Everybody's going to have a blast of it. There's no animosity. We're all bouncing into our groups. We all help each other out. It's just all for the traders to, and we saw what it works like. I mean, it's significantly made a difference for traders passing the combine to the funded level. That's what it's all about, and it made a huge impact. That's why we're doing it again. We kicked up the coaches. We're going to be doing it again, and we're going to even more coaches and more traders and more options and more opportunities. So thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the chat for being in here and looking out everything else. And we'll see you on the first thing in the morning.
Awesome stuff. Coach Paul, throw it to you before we get out of here. Any final words before we go?
Get some rest because strap on your seatbelt, because this is just January, the last day of the month of what's going to be not going to disappear.
Not at all.
Plenty of opportunity, but tighten your, I would say, size.
Yep.
That's the most, but you're not, think about it, measure it, and execute it. All right.
There we go.
See you.
Thanks,
tomorrow.
Coach. See you all tomorrow, lunatics. I'll see you all in about 40 minutes from now if you are watching. Trade well, manage your risk, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Cheers.